Hi, I'm Gaylin. I'm the Rhinestone Queen. I make dance costumes. I have Rhinestone Queen costumes in Gonzales, Louisiana. Today I want to show you how to make spaghetti straps to use on a leotard or a dance costume. Before we move forward, let's talk a little bit about fabrics. The fabric we're using today is a 4-way stretch lycra. This particular one is a pin dot fabric. You can see it's shiny and sparkly on one side, and the other side is a more flat background. It doesn't really matter. So long as it's a 4-way stretch lycra, you're going to be fine. One of the great things about lycra is that you see this edge right here? It's been cut. And this cut edge won't ravel. So no matter, you don't even have to have a good hard finish on it, a pretty clean finish. You can just cut it with your scissors or your rotary cutter and you're going to be fine, which we'll do when we make the spaghetti straps. And that's real important that we don't have fabric that's going to ravel. Some lycras do come in a 2-way stretch. This is a 2-way stretch fabric, where this one, I forgot to show you, this one stretches 4 ways. It'll pull this way and it'll pull this way. It doesn't matter which way I stretch it, the fabric has give. So whichever way you cut it, you're going to be fine. The fabric will give for you. On a 2-way stretch though, you'll notice this particular fabric, if I pull it this way, it stretches just fine. But if I pull it this way, there's no stretch. So it's really important if you're using a 2-way stretch lycra that you cut your spaghetti straps so that you're using the piece that stretches this way. So you want to cut your spaghetti straps to go this way on a 2-way stretch. Other than that, with a 4-way stretch, you can cut them wherever it makes the most sense. Okay, so the first step in making a spaghetti strap is just cutting your fabric. So I'm going to cut a strip. I'm going to cut it about 4 fingers wide. So that's about how wide I'm going right there. So I'll give it a cut. And it's not perfectly even, if you notice, and that's okay. But with this width of fabric, I have enough here to make 2 spaghetti straps. Before we get started with our spaghetti strap, let's take a minute to talk about elastic. The elastic I'll be using today is a 3/8 inch wide elastic. It's a braided elastic, the typical type elastic that you find in your fabric stores. That's my favorite width, and that's typically what you'll see. You also can use, if you want a thinner strap, you can use 1/4 inch, and you might notice that this elastic is nude. I didn't buy it that way. I actually dyed it. You can tea dye elastic if you want. All you do is make a super concentrated batch of tea. I might use, say, 12 tea bags to a gallon. Oh, I can't even tell you how many. I'll figure that out and I'll do another video on it, how to tea dye elastic. But you can tea dye elastic. Just make sure you don't leave the tea bags in. I like to use the tea dyed elastic if I'm making spaghetti straps with a fabric like this that's sheer. You see how against my skin it looks one way. If I happen to have it against black, it would look a little different. If I want the straps to look like as if they're nude, you know, against skin and have the same look, I would put a nude piece of elastic under it. You can see that if I put a white piece of elastic under this, it really does destroy the look of this dark fabric, and we wouldn't want to do this. So for this dark sheer fabric, I would either put black elastic under it, or I would put nude elastic under it, depending upon the look I'm going for. It just, you know, just depends on how you want your finished costume to look. So you have options with colors, you have options with widths. Today we're going to be working with 3/8 inch white elastic. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and sew the elastic to the fabric. So here's my fabric. It's got a right side and a wrong side. I'm going to do this first step, sewing the elastic on the wrong side, because when we're done, we're going to flip this over a couple of times, and that's going to make our nice finished spaghetti strap. So I'm going to start here. I'm using the serger, but I'm also going to show you how to do it on a regular sewing machine in the next step. So here we go. I first stick my fabric under the foot, and if you see, I'm putting it past, this is the knife, it cuts the fabric as it sews. So I'm going to put the elastic on the other edge of the knife and the fabric on this edge of the knife because I want to cut off excess fabric. So then I stick the elastic under, and I just sew it on, making sure I'm cutting off this excess piece of fabric. It's very important not to pull as you sew because we want a flat finish on our spaghetti strap. If I pull, it's going to waffle like this. So I pulled a little bit on this part so you can see the waffling. We don't want waffling, so you want to make sure you don't pull. And I'm using black thread. If you're doing this for real, of course, you would use some complementary thread. I'm using black thread so that you can see my stitching. I want you to be able to see that so you can tell a little better how things go together. So we're going to move on to the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm setting my machine on a zigzag stitch. So I've selected zigzag. I want it to be, I've got a 2 for my length, and because I want a narrow length, I want the stitches to be fairly close together. And then for the width, I'm going to go ahead and, I've got it at about a 3.5. That's pretty good. And I'll leave it there for the whole thing, for both this part and the finishing part. Okay, so now I'm at the regular machine, and you can see my edge of fabric is not real clean. That's okay, we'll clean it up afterwards. So we'll go ahead and put the foot down and just stitch on over. And I've got it on a zigzag stitch, and I'm sewing right down the center of the elastic. Okay, so now I'm done, and I'll go ahead and clip my thread, and you can see that there's a little bit of fabric sticking out on the edge. All we got to do is just go through each place that is sticking out a little bit, just trim it where you get a clean edge right next to the elastic without cutting the elastic. By the way, I didn't mention, when you sew it, you want this to be able to stretch, right? See the stretch that's in the seam? That's because I sewed it with a zigzag stitch. If you sew it with a straight stitch, you won't get a nice stretch. Okay, to finish a spaghetti strap, all we've got to do, here's my fabric. By the way, this is the wrong side, and here's the right side of the fabric. You can see there's an obvious difference. I take the elastic, I turn it over once, and then twice, and I push it with my finger a little bit. Gentle pressure is real important. Don't use heavy pressure. If you use heavy pressure, you'll get a wonky looking spaghetti strap, and I'll show you how that looks. Here's the gentle pressure, that's the right way. And I'm just using that same zigzag stitch and going straight in. By the way, another option you have is to use a stretch stitch if you have a stretch stitch on your machine. The stretch stitches usually are a little more secure, and that's probably going to give you a better result. But if you don't have a stretch stitch, zigzag works just fine. So here's the stretch stitch. And as promised, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit of a tug as I sew it, just so you can see what happens. I'm going to pull it really hard, and you'll see what happens. Okay. So I don't know if you can tell, but see how it's got like a bubbling here? It's a little bubbly, and we don't want bubbly spaghetti straps. We want nice, smooth spaghetti straps. The next step in getting this done is simply to trim away the excess fabric. So I take it and flip it over, fold it back. See where I'm, oh wait, you can't see, there you go. So I've revealed the back side of the spaghetti strap, and then you just take the scissors and cut right along the edge. And you're gonna use a little bit of tension as you pull this. So pull the part away, and hold the strap down with the scissors, with the pressure. And there we go, finished spaghetti strap. So here's our finished spaghetti strap. You can see where I used the zigzag stitch. Oh, that's the back side of it. And you see the back side doesn't look half bad, even after you just cut it off. But here's the zigzag stitching, and here's where I did that stretch stitch. I do prefer to use the stretch stitch on dance costumes only because I find it to be a little more secure and less likely to rip as the season goes on. But the zigzag does work just fine if that's all you have on your machine. But if you have a stretch stitch, please use that. I think you'll find you'll be more pleased. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful to you. I'd appreciate your feedback at the end. And if you would, go ahead and like my page so you can see future videos as they come out. I'll be pushing through some videos to show you how to make all kinds of things for a dance costume. So I hope to see you again in the future. And if you want to see pictures of my work, you can see it on my Facebook page at Rhinestone Queen Costumes.